Back in February, we celebrated Valentine's Day, and it was right about that time that I heard a podcast episode on NPR, and I heard a neuroscientist talking about the fact that, as far as science goes, love is the next frontier. And that got me thinking about ways that single people could have rituals for Valentine's Day. I want to share those ideas with you today. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Weddings with Zita. Here's your host and producer, Zita Christian.
As I said in the open, this particular episode is inspired by Valentine's Day, and I'm looking for rituals that my single friends can do to celebrate Valentine's Day. So these are rituals about love, and they are rituals for one. I'm particularly looking for rituals that don't involve candy and chocolates and flowers and other things that we think of ordinarily for Valentine's Day. I do have a lot of single friends. Some are single by choice. Some are widowed, some are divorced, and some are what I call living in the wait. So this episode is not intended to say that everybody needs to be in a loving, committed relationship. Those of you who follow the show will know that I'm a romance writer, but that does not mean that I believe everybody has to be in a committed, loving relationship in order to have a fulfilling life. I don't believe that at all. What I do believe is that we all have to open the channel, the heart chakra, so that we can give and receive love. It's that back and forth that is necessary to have that beautiful feeling that we have a fulfilled life. So this particular episode of NPR that I found so fascinating, the host is Krista Tippett. The show is called On Being. And Krista Tippett was interviewing Richard Davidson. He is a neuroscientist and professor of psychology and psychiatry at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. What they talked about on that podcast was love and kindness, and the fact, as I mentioned in the open, that love is the next frontier for science, which I find fascinating. So here were the key takeaways that I took from listening to that episode. I encourage you to listen to it yourself. It's the podcast called On Being. So my key takeaways. Number one, humans are born with an innate propensity for kindness, but the kindness has to be nurtured in order for it to be expressed. Second one, empathy is a prerequisite for kindness. So empathy, being able to feel the way other people are feeling, to put yourself in their shoes. And third, there is a definite link between and among empathy, kindness, and generosity. And those are the things that got me thinking about rituals for love. And I thought, well, what kind of rituals might we create that involve empathy, kindness, and generosity? So first I have to remind you, if this is the first time you're watching this show, is that my thoughts, my definition of ritual, not that I didn't create it, but that ritual is a visible act performed with invisible intent. So if you have ever made a wish and blown out the candles on a birthday cake, you have performed a ritual. It can be that simple. So then comes the question, well, rituals about love. If we're doing a ritual about love, is it guaranteed to bring love into our lives? No. Rituals should never be designed to motivate somebody else to do something. Rituals, a good, safe, simple ritual, is designed that you make the change within yourself. And the rituals that I'm talking about are rituals that will open up your own heart, your own chakra, to giving and receiving love. I was thinking the other day about the movies that I see on the Hallmark Channel and on Lifetime. And they have movies about the passage of time, about contributing money to a worthy cause, about donating an item to some sort of a charity event, and all about the sweat equity that somebody puts into some kind of a project. And those are pretty classic things because they involve multiple people. Sometimes you know the person in advance who's on the receiving end, and sometimes you don't. But they're good things to think about because we all have those gifts of being able to give time and energy, maybe objects, certainly sweat equity, depending on what it is we're looking at. I was also thinking about stories that I've seen on commercials. You know the one that somebody's driving through the fast food line and they come up to the window and pay not only for their own order, but they pay for the order of the person behind them. And then the person behind them comes up to the window and the cashier says, "Your order's all been paid for." And we think about that as obviously an act of kindness, certainly an act of generosity. Also, there's a commercial about someone who has won a lottery. And you see this person getting up from maybe having breakfast in this little cafe, and he leaves a very generous tip for the server. And you see the reaction of the server. Now, those are two examples, that fast food restaurant and leaving a generous tip in the diner. Those are examples of acts of kindness and generosity. And what I'm looking at is, how can you take something like that and add the component of intent and make it a ritual? So I have some ideas to share with you. First one is a little ritual I call feel, I can't even read my own writing, feel loved. Now this one was inspired by my sister, Laurie Winterberg, down in Pensacola, Florida. My sister volunteers once a week at a local nursing home assisted living center. And what she does, she has a couple people she sees regularly. She'll go in, she might read a story, read a couple chapters of a book. There's a particular woman there that my sister will go in and paint her fingernails, and they just talk. I can imagine her maybe looking at photo albums, talking about old days, bringing back lovely memories for the woman. I think she meets with men also, but I'm not sure. But the idea is to go into a community that does not have a lot of interaction other than the professionals who work there, and bring some kind of loving energy. So what I would do in a situation like that is, upon arriving, you sit down and you meet with the person you're going to be spending time with, take the person's hand, and simply draw a heart on the person's hand. Very simple, no tools needed, just your finger. Draw a heart on the person's hand, and as you do so, say, "You are loved." And when you get ready to leave, after you've been there for a few hours, you do it again. You draw on the person's hand, "You are loved." And as you leave this nursing home or assisted living facility, you draw a heart on your own hand and say, "I am loved." And I have to tell you, in connection with this particular ritual, I'm working with a young woman in California. Her name is Wendy Wallace. I've never met Wendy. She was referred to me by David Hooper, who has a class and a book about podcasting, and I'm studying that. And he referred me to Wendy so that she could help me with a particular challenge I'm facing. So Wendy has agreed to be a beta tester for some of the rituals I'm creating, which is very helpful because we don't know each other, so there's no expectation. So I gave her this ritual, and this is what she wrote back to me. In fact, she listened to the ritual on an episode of the podcast. The podcast is called Ritual Recipes. So she listened to that episode, and she wrote back and said, "The episode is captivating. The idea of drawing a heart and touching a hand as a ritual is so beautiful. I did it on my own hand when you suggested it, and it was lovely." Now, I mention that because one of the most important things is that you don't discount the simplicity of a ritual. This can be a very, very powerful ritual. I know from my years as a handwriting analyst that what the hand does, there's the motion of the hand in writing that makes a direct linkage to what's going on in the brain. So when you draw a heart on your hand and you say the words, "I am loved," that message is going up into your brain, and that is helping you open up that heart chakra to give and receive love. Just have to be sure that you focus. You don't want to do it as a routine. Ritual is not routine, and people get them, use the word simultaneously all the time, but there's a difference. So what I'm saying is that you focus on what you're doing. Focus on the words, focus on drawing a heart, and the words, "You are loved," and "I am loved." You know, I'm thinking about that, about the birthday cake and making a wish. It occurred to me, you know, sometimes you have somebody who's having a birthday and they say, "Oh no, I don't want a cake, I don't want a cake," or I'd like an ice cream cake, or "I'm not eating any sweets," or I don't want any sugar. The person doesn't, the people who are responsible for creating the celebration, they're not saying, "Here's a sugar-free candy bar." They're bringing a little tiny cupcake, sometimes a little bitty cupcake, but it has a candle in it so that it can be lit, so the person who's having the birthday can still make a wish and blow out the candle. Those ideas are ingrained in us because they're powerful. All right, let me tell you about another one. This is about donating items to charity. This is a really simple one, and if you're watching or you're aware of all the Marie Kondo efforts, getting rid of things that don't bring you joy, well, maybe they're going to bring somebody else joy. And the act of kindness and generosity is for you to donate an item. Let's say it's jewelry. Let's say it's a bracelet. You're going to donate a bracelet to your local charity shop or Goodwill or Salvation Army. Turn it into a ritual by getting a pretty box. Like, here's a little gift box here. Put the item in the box, or put it in a little gauzy bag and write a note. Write something on there about how that bracelet was something that you wore when you had your first date with the person you wound up marrying. Or maybe this was the bracelet I wore when I had the job interview and I got the job that I've always wanted my whole life. May this bracelet bring you success. May it bring you love. May it connect you and help you fulfill whatever your wish is. So the act of kindness and generosity of giving the bracelet is one thing. Adding the note, adding the intent, turns it into a ritual. Now, the thing with donating items is the chances are you will never meet the person who receives your item. And that's okay. What you need to remember is that destiny is a wide road, and you never know where your act of kindness and generosity, especially if you add the element of intent, make it a ritual, you never know what kind of outcome will come from that. And all my writer friends out there, I can just see you coming up with all these kind of ideas, for story ideas, for romance stories. I'm having some of my own. All right. When you leave the place where you are donating the item, what you want to do, because you want a ritual back to yourself that opens up your own channel of giving and receiving love, not only with the giving of the item, but you want to say to yourself, I have abundance in my life, and I enjoy sharing it with others. And that kind of abundance in that instance was about the bracelet, but there's so many other ways that you can express abundance. So just remember that anytime you are donating something. All right, now I have a ritual about animals, because thinking about rescue animals, my husband and I were down at a couple shelters recently, and it inspired this ritual. We know that there are a lot of animals who need love, and they're looking for their forever home. So those of you who have ever had pets know that they give unconditional love. And I think that's one of the reasons why having a pet makes people live longer, makes them have healthier lives, more fulfilling lives. But not everybody can have a pet. And sometimes that's because of allergies, or maybe it's because of where you live and you're not allowed to have pets. So you can volunteer. You can always comfort an animal that's been traumatized, and you can socialize a feral animal. So I was thinking about that after Dick and I went to this particular shelter recently. Like I said before, volunteering is an example of an act of kindness, an act of generosity. But what I'm talking about is turning this into a ritual. So imagine that you're going to a shelter and you're sitting with a cat. Now this is an old cat. And you've heard from the people who work there that this cat belonged to a woman who died. And someone brought the cat into the shelter. The cat is lonely, the cat is old, and the cat is suffering from its own kind of grief. It's listless, it has no appetite, and I think you can tell when an animal looks lonely or depressed. So as you're sitting there volunteering and you're stroking the cat's fur, and yes, this is a generous act of your time, it's a kind act, but I want you to turn it into a ritual. So what you do is you talk to the cat and you describe the new home that you envision for the cat. And you're stroking the cat and you're saying, and pretty soon you're going to live in a lovely little cottage, and it will be filled with the aroma of cookies. There will be little flower prints on the cushions and on the couch. You'll have a comfy little spot right on the bed. I mean, you just give the details, all the details that show you are envisioning the perfect home for this cat. Now, let's suppose that you're there because you're helping a dog. And this dog maybe was a rescue dog from a storm, a hurricane that took place, hundreds, thousands of miles away. So we'll pretend that this is the little dog in the rescue place. And the idea here is you want to help the dog envision a future. But what you want to do is, if this is a dog that is lively and needs exercise, and you're there to help work the dog, give playtime to the dog, you throw the stick and tell the dog to fetch the stick, and then you turn it into a ritual and you say, fetch the family that you want to come into your life and bring you home. Fetch your family. And every time you throw the stick, you say, fetch the stick and fetch your family. And you might talk about the family that you think this dog will love. Maybe there's a little boy. Maybe there's a little boy, 8 or 10 years old, and maybe he likes to run around in the backyard. Maybe he likes to go in the woods. Maybe he likes to have a dog with him at sporting events. Maybe he loves the idea of having a dog sleeping, on his bed or on the next to the bed on the floor, whatever is allowed in the household. So the idea is, though, to visualize specific details for the dog, visualizing a family because he lost that family. When you leave the shelter, same thing as leaving, the assisted living center, same thing as leaving a place where you're donating an item of charity. You want to pull the ritual back to yourself. And you want to say, depending on what your circumstance is, I too want a loving, cozy, secure home. Or I too want a loving, vibrant, playful family. So that, I guess it comes down to this. Sometimes it's simply easier to visualize what you want by visualizing it for somebody else first. And that's where the animals come in, because we can all visualize a beautiful life for an animal in need, whether it's the companionship of one person in a quiet household or the lively family energy. So do it for somebody else first, and then it's a little easier to do it for yourself. And when you do it for yourself, just as you visualize a particular type of home or family for the dog or the cat, you have to be specific about what you want. You have to think very clearly about the kind of energy that you want to create in your home. The whole idea of all of this is opening your heart to receive and to give love. This little bitty blue heart. There we go. In fact, I've got a couple of them here. Sometimes what you really need is to be able to hold a heart, carry it in your pocket. There are smaller ones than this too, but I like these. They have a nice weight to them. The stone itself is not what's magical, although there's a whole theory about color vibration, and I believe in that, but that's not what I'm talking about today. What I'm talking about today is the fact that this shape, this stone, something that's solid, that comes from the earth, something that lasts. This stone is in the shape that we associate with love, and carrying the stone is a reminder for you to focus your energy on love. You focus your energy on opening the heart chakra so that you can give and receive love, and you want to use different rituals to facilitate that flow of energy. One final idea I want to share with you, and don't laugh at this. Get a little picture frame, a little heart-shaped picture frame. Put your own picture in it. And you set it somewhere where you'll see it frequently. You need to remind yourself, I love myself. I know who this person is. I know the qualities this person has. I know what this person wants to share with someone else. And I can see the loving energy in that person. And then you also say, and I trust that someone else will see the same loving energy. So those are just some simple ideas for rituals to bring love into your life that don't involve candy and flowers and music and chocolate. They're not just for Valentine's Day, because love is timeless. We all need love. It's not just something we express one time a year. I'll also say that expressions of love come in many different languages. When I'm working with my couples, I'm a wedding officiant. When I'm working with my couples, I have them complete a questionnaire. And that gives me information that I can use to shape their ceremony. One of the questions in the questionnaire is, how does the other person express love without using the words? I want to know, what does the person do with their hands? Because as I said earlier, something I learned from my days as a handwriting analyst, the motion of the hand sends a signal to the brain. So what does this person do to express love? And sometimes it's a matter of keeping the car maintained, reaching for items that are high up on a shelf, or picking up a favorite dessert on the way home, or letting the other person sleep late, or getting up early to make coffee, even though the one person doesn't like coffee at all but knows that the other one does. These are these kind of acts of loving kindness that show a generosity of spirit. And these are the things we do in order to express love. You need to, if you don't have the kind of love in your life that you want now, you need to find ways to express the kind of love that you do want, whether it is the giving of something that you're donating, whether it is envisioning the kind of home and family that you want for someone else, or whether it's helping somebody remember happy memories, making new memories, making them realize that just because life circumstances have changed, that doesn't mean that you're any less loved. So I hope these have been helpful to you. I hope you'll try some rituals, some of that I've created, and maybe some of your own, and I hope you'll tell me about them. I'm assuming that if you write and tell me about them, that it's okay for me to talk about them on my podcast, Ritual Recipes. And I guess it goes without saying, but I do want to say it. Of course you can live your life without ritual. But the problem with that is you wind up living life like you're inside a hamster wheel, and everything just keeps moving, and your view doesn't change. And before you know it, another Valentine's Day has come and gone, another Christmas, another Thanksgiving, whatever the holiday, the loving holiday is that you're celebrating, that comes and goes and nothing has changed for you. So you need to find some ways to make a change. And I am not at all suggesting that this is something that's going to happen overnight. It's not. But bringing love into your life is, it's worth the effort. And sometimes we'll think of the stories where two people meet and we say, and it was love at first sight. I believe in that. That's what happened to my parents. But, or not but, and each of them had already been living a life that opened them up to acts of kindness and generosity to other people. With my mother, it was siblings from a large family, and she was working her very first job in Hershey, Pennsylvania, at the time that she met my dad. And he was on military leave. His ship had been torpedoed in World War II, and he was on his way home for the first time in many years. He was looking forward to seeing his family. His heart was filled with images of family. Her heart was filled with images of her own family and of her many, many siblings. And they met. Their hearts were ready. They were open to receiving love so that when it came, they were ready to receive it. And they were already giving it in many ways to, fellow sailors on the ship or to people my mom worked with, colleagues. You have to be open to everybody else. Notice other people. See what you can do for them. Small, simple things like a smile, like saying, oh, that looks nice on you. Oh, did you have a nice weekend? And actually listen to what they say. So with all of these simple ideas, put them into practice. Get yourself ready to have a different Valentine's Day next year. And as I love to close this show, saying that, in a strong marriage, or really in any strong relationship, happiness is something that's co-created. Remember to do your part, and remember to join me again next time. Thank you.
Are you planning a wedding or renewing your vows? Let today's leading wedding vendors inspire and guide you. To learn about upcoming guests and join the discussion, like us on Facebook, Zita TV. Weddings with Zita is a program of Moon River Rituals. For more information, visit zitatv.com.